more transparency in the system. With conflicting views emerging on this issue, the debate on judges' appointment is far from over. And joining me in the program is Manish Chibbar, legal editor with Indian Express, Justice P.C. Agarwal, former judge, Madhya Pradesh High Court, Professor C. Rajkumar, Vice Chancellor, O.P. Jindal University, and Justice S.N. Dhingra, former judge, Delhi High Court. Welcome to the program. I'd like to start with you, Professor Rajkumar. Since now the case is between the government and the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court has said, the government has first of all made it very clear that even if the collegium will not be revived, even if the NJAC goes. And what the Supreme Court has rather told the government is that in any case the collegium will be there, it will be back if NJAC is quashed. I mean, one will have to look at it constitutionally. What is your take? What are going to be the probabilities?
Well, I was rather surprised by the argument made by the Attorney General that if, first of all, such an eventuality I need not have been discussed in that context. It's almost like what was being discussed is the constitutional validity of the National Judicial Appointments Commission, and it would be best advice on the part of the government to make a strong case that why the NJAC is indeed within the framework of the Constitution. And it almost does not matter, it's almost second-guessing the outcome of the judgment and the decision of the court. I am of the view that the NJAC itself, the way the legislation has been drafted and many provisions of the NJAC itself will be declared unconstitutional, as it ought to be, because of a number of reasons which I can talk about it. As far as the court's own, at this stage the court is not really making any determination. It was more an exchange between the government and the court, and I don't think we need to make any determination at this stage what will happen. But the right course constitutionally is that if the NJAC Act is declared unconstitutional, clearly there is not going to be a vacuum or a gap or some sort of a constitutional vacuum in which a decision cannot be made. The status quo ante could be restored by the court in the process of that decision if it chooses to do so. So at least from the standpoint of the constitutional framework, it is the government's argument that if the court declares it unconstitutional, it's almost like a wheeling threat in some ways, that if the court was thinking that somehow the collegium system could be revived, the government is telling that even if you declare the legislation unconstitutional, the collegium system will not be revived, and the court clearly does not think on the same lines. As far as the constitutional arguments as to why the NJAC Act is unconstitutional, I believe at least two important provisions of the Constitution of the NJAC is problematic. First, the very nature of the constitution of the selection committee, which will be involved in determination of the selection of the two eminent members. I think the idea of the Chief Justice of India, the Prime Minister of India, and the Leader of Opposition coming together in engaging and in many ways debating and negotiating the process of selecting two eminent members is extremely problematic for a number of reasons. Most importantly, from the time when the Constitution was framed till today, I think the role of the judiciary has dramatically increased. Today, 70% of cases that are pending before the courts are actually the government is a litigant. This has dramatically altered the relationship between the legislature and the executive on one hand and the judiciary on the other. The second is the idea of the veto powers of two members within the NJAC, which clearly is arbitrary and does not have an opportunity to be fairly exercised. Fine.
We'll talk about this in detail. Justice Dhingra, why is it that the advocates and lots of other former judges have come together and they have filed petitions questioning the validity of the constitutional validity of the NJAC, debating over the issue of NJAC? What is wrong with this?
See, I find that the system which was going to be scrapped was looked by many people with the history. When system is not working at all in a fair and proper manner. See, this collegium system from the day I would exclude few first years, 2-3 years. From the day it started, see, it became a barter system. See, the members of collegium started bartering with each other. You have one member, I have one member, this is my liking, this is my liking. Merits were not at all considered.
And you think that the new system will
the merits
will address those issues?
And the people were not knowing why a Chief Justice who had been made Chief Justice only 6 months before is being brought to Supreme Court, and a Chief Justice who is working for about 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, he is not brought to Supreme Court. Why a person is picked up who has not at all worked even as Chief Justice, and his cases, you see, he heard 100 cases, he is transferred to another court, he left all those 100 cases undecided, went to other court, there also he did not decide any case, and he is brought to Supreme Court.
So does that also lead to some sort of
not only this,
cases?
There are not innumerable instances where selections made by the collegium
but not
are
appropriate,
questionable.
Okay.
And that is why you see, this was a feeling within the system. If you talk privately to the judges, not publicly, because on public platform none will speak against other because they have vested interest. If you talk to them privately, see, each one of them, each of the Chief Justice of High Court will tell you why this system is bad. But nobody is able to come out openly against the system, and that is the reason that the Parliament and most of the senior advocates, even you see the senior advocate who is arguing for this system, collegium system, he had written a book, today's newspaper was there. He is arguing, you see, in favor of collegium system, but in his own book he has devoted one chapter condemning this system.
Okay.
So this system, you see, was not working. It was an opaque system where nobody knew why a judge has been selected, why he is rejected, why Justice Shah was not made Supreme Court judge, why Mr. X was.
Fine. Let me ask Manish. Manish, was everything really wrong with the collegium system, that it really wanted or it needed a replacement in the form of an NJAC?
Yeah, well, look, there were problems with the collegium system, there is no doubt. It was a very opaque system, you know, there was no transparency, nobody knew, everybody seems to agree, and I also agree that nobody knew, you know, why a certain person was picked over others and what was the criteria. But to replace it with something called the NJAC, I don't think that is a very good idea. The reason being, earlier, the charge against the collegium system was that there used to be a bandarbant between the judges. You know, one judge and two judges, and they would say, you pick my man, I pick yours. Now, same thing will happen, only the pie has been, you know, the division will be, there will be more division. What will happen is, now the government will also bring in its own people. They will say, okay, 2 of yours, 2 of ours. I don't think the collegium system has been replaced by a better system. I am sure if the government really wanted to improve the system, it could. There were many steps, including making it mandatory for the collegium itself, for the Supreme Court, for the judges to declare their interest. For example, I know of many cases where judges, when they became members of the collegium, they supported and brought in their own juniors when they were lawyers into the as High Court judges. So if they declare their interest, and if, you know, at the very outset they say that so and so has been my junior when I was a lawyer, so, and I walk out or I don't participate in this meeting, I think that would be, you know, no system is perfect. Let's, you know, for example, we don't always get the democratic system of elections. It does not always choose the best people to represent us in the parliament. But we are not questioning democracy. We are not questioning elections.
You know, one question has been that ideally, what should be the best way to appoint judges? Because as going by what Justice Dhingra has just said, that there was indeed a lot of lot of things were ignored. especially the merits of judges who should be rather promoted, and that would have really indirectly led to a pendency of a number of cases that actually led to less transparency and, the objectivity, the whole idea of objectivity also gets to
I think it's a wrong assumption, it's a wrong premise for anybody to say that because of the kind of judges we have, the cases are so, the pendency is so high. You have 10,000 judges in the Supreme Court, even then, because we are a litigious nation, everybody likes to file a case. I have 10 cases going on right now in various courts. But having said that, any system would be, better than the collegium system as far as it is transparent.
Okay.
As far as we are aware of the merits of the people who are being considered, who are being chosen. For example, he just gave an example of Justice Shah. I totally agree. I think Justice Shah, he was a very fine judge. At the end of the day, nobody knows in India, and I am a journalist, it's my job to find out. I have spoken to so many people, including the people who were there in that collegium, in the Supreme Court collegium, which overlooked Justice Shah for his appointment into the Supreme Court. I have asked them, I have yet to receive a proper response as to why he was not considered or why he was dropped. So I think, what the government could have done is make it mandatory for the collegium to, for example, circulate a list of names. These are the 50 people among lawyers we are considering, and these are the 10 finally who have been chosen. And if somebody wants to say, if for example, if he has a case against one of those,
which means you're rather saying that NJAC was not necessary. There could have been a change in the collegium system.
Collegium, all
replacing it with NJAC. You are
to make it transparent.
Okay.
To have more questions.
Okay.
Allow people to ask.
Fine. Let me ask Justice Agarwal here. Justice Agarwal, many judges are of the opinion that NJAC rather is a better system than the collegium system, and that can, as the government says, will ensure more transparency, more objectivity and accountability.
ये बात सही है कि कोई भी सिस्टम जो है उसमें कमियां हो सकती हैं और उसके जो पालन में थोड़ी प्रॉब्लम्स आ सकती हैं, लेकिन बाय एंड लार्ज ऐसा लगता है कि चेंज तो आवश्यक है। इसलिए क्योंकि बहुत बार मेरिट को नहीं देखा गया है, बहुत बार ऐसा भी हुआ है कि जो उन्हीं के जूनियर्स, उन्हीं के परिवार के लोग वही हाई कोर्ट जजेस की तरह से अपॉइंट हो गए हैं जो नहीं होने चाहिए थे। तो ये है कि अब देखा जाए तो क्या है कि हम ये कह रहे हैं कि जब पॉलिटिक्स के हाथ में, पॉलिटिशियंस के हाथ में था तो पॉलिटिशियन आते थे, जब जजेस के हाथ में था तो जजेस आने लग गए। ये जो है ना, ये अब सबसे बड़ी बात जो है पार्लियामेंट ने पास किया है, बोथ हाउसेज हैव वोटेड फॉर इट, एक्चुअली इट इज सपोर्टेड बाय द एक्चुअली सो मेनी दैट से बहुत से स्टेट्स ने भी इसको मान लिया है। तो इतना इजीली हम ये नहीं कर सकते हैं कि ये गलत है। इसका जो एक्सपीरियंस जो बताता है वो ये बताता है कि इवन आपका जो कॉलेजियन सिस्टम था वो सही काम कितना कर रहा था। अब बात क्या है कि आप कह तो कुछ सकते नहीं।
But Justice Agarwal, what is your take on these two very critical issues, which we'll have to come to? This inclusion of two eminent persons on that panel and the appointment of or the selection of those two eminent persons. How about that? Because many people who have petitioned against the NJAC have this view in their mind.
ये सोचना कि प्रेसिडेंट ऑफ इंडिया और प्राइम मिनिस्टर और विरोधी पार्टी का मुख्य व्यक्ति एक गलत आदमी को सिलेक्ट कर देगा, तब तो हम किसी पर विश्वास नहीं करेंगे। ये ऐसा नहीं है। ये दिस इज एक्चुअली जस्ट एक्चुअली शोइंग कि वो गलत है, बस इसके अलावा कुछ नहीं। ऐसा सोचना कि जो व्यक्ति, जो जज या जो एडवोकेट कानून नहीं जानता उसको ये जज बना देंगे। अब उस हिसाब से देखा जाए तो जो बन गए हैं उनके बारे में क्या कहा जाए?
If I can respond to that, it's again a misnomer, it's a fallacious argument to say that a committee comprising headed by the Prime Minister of this country and the Chief Justice and Leader of Opposition will always select the right person. You have a very latest example, the CVC has been selected and already there are noises. against his selection. People are questioning his integrity. People are questioning the reason he has been brought in. You have the case of P.J. Thomas. And the government, it's a very interesting thing. Mr. Arun Jaitley, as leader of opposition in the Rajya Sabha, opposed the appointment of a former Supreme Court judge as member of the NHRC. And the same judge whose name has been quoted today, in fact I think Justice, the judge also hinted towards the same name, the same judge who never passed a judgment, who gave just 3 judgments in his lifetime, he is now a member of the NHRC. And selected by a panel comprising the Prime Minister, Leader of Opposition, Home Minister, and Mr. Arun Jaitley.
Justice Dhingra, in that case, where is, do you think that this new system is also going to address the issue of transparency and, less corruption, something which you had hinted at while you were talking about the collegium system?
See, the difference between this system and the collegium system, one major difference would be that this system would be targeted by the press very consistently, which the press could not target the collegium system because of the very fact of contempt of court. You see, you will be hitting at NJAC the moment they select a person of wrong nature.
Which couldn't have been possible in the previous system.
Which is not possible in the previous system. In collegium system, you see, you see, in this NJAC, since there will be rules, there will be criteria laid down. All these things are to be laid down in NJAC, that this will be criteria, this will be rule, this will be number of years, number of judgments given by, his standing should be there. All these things will be laid down. In collegium system, nothing is laid down. You are sister of a brother judge. At the age of 59 and a half, you can be brought in the High Court. While the rule laid down by Supreme Court informally is that even service judge at the age of 59 and a half cannot be brought, elevated to
Manish, is that a very crucial angle here? Does it make it more open now? Otherwise it used to be an internal matter, as Justice Dhingra.
That brings me back to my original argument. Okay. I said that you make collegium system more transparent. There is no need for an NJAC. And who will stand guarantee, the rules are yet to be framed, who will stand guarantee that only the right people, that those rules will allow? Is it the government's case that have you heard the Attorney General telling the court that everything will be under RTI? No, they will never say that. You take it from me,
so because I know how the government. But
yeah, basically,
his argument of the press not taking it up because that mounts to contempt of court. In case you are talking about strengthening the collegium system, that condition will remain.
I totally agree. There were problems earlier about reporting, but why do you forget the cases of recent times? Justice Dinakaran, I have reported everything about him. I have reported about judges. Didn't I write about Justice Shah being overlooked? So there was no contempt. Basically, the biggest problem with collegium system was that they were bringing in their own people in the garb of, without explaining why those people deserved to be in a particular court. Unfortunately, the NJAC will perpetuate the same.
Fine. On that note, sir, I'll have to take a very quick break, but after the break, the discussion will continue. Please don't go away. Welcome back. In Insight today, we are discussing the judges' appointment issue. Professor Rajkumar, what is this, and where do you think this debate is really going to head now? Because the latest that you also hear is that the Supreme Court has wanted the centre to prove that the assemblies, the state assemblies, have indeed discussed this particular bill, because it's very important for the states also to come up with their opinion on the NJAC. What is your take?
Well, first of all, I think we should also understand that the debate is, at least what the Supreme Court is hearing, is not about whether collegium system was better or NJAC is better. Yeah. It has a very different question. It is looking at the constitutional validity of the National Judicial Appointments Commission. My own view is that collegium has a number of problems, but that's not what we're discussing. We are discussing whether the NJAC, as it is currently formulated, is valid under the constitutional scheme of things, and there my view is that it isn't. As far as what the court is looking at in this respect is that it's pretty much trying to understand whether to what extent the legislature, both parliament, also state legislative assemblies, has applied its mind in relation to drafting the legislation. If you remember, it's public knowledge that the NJAC was very quickly drafted legislation. Within several days after the law minister had convened a meeting to seek some sort of a consultation in which the bill was not even provided, suddenly everybody came to know that the cabinet has cleared and the matter is being brought before. When we are going to take a departure from a process of appointment of judges, which has been for decades, and we all have many, and I agree with the broad, views in the panel that the collegium system has huge problems, and we are going to create a new system. It is natural and it is rather expected that we need to have a broad, consultative, participative exercise involving different frameworks of appointment of judges that is prevailing in different parts of the world, and to determine what is suitable in our country. That was not the case in this situation. What was done was a hurriedly drafted bill without proper application of mind, without taking into account the potential constitutional implications of a number of provisions. I mentioned about the fact that I believe that the current NJAC as it is drafted will be declared as unconstitutional for violation of the basic structure of the Constitution. And the basic structure and doctrine currently prevails as the framework on the basis of which judiciary will determine the constitutional validity of a legislation of this kind. It starts from arbitrariness and the way the very process of appointment of members and the powers given to any member to provide veto for the appointment of these provisions does not reflect a democratic, a transparent and inclusive process that is going to replace what is considered as an undemocratic lack of transparency that prevailed in the collegiate system.
Okay.
That is why it will be declared unconstitutional.
Justice Jingra, what is your take on these two very crucial issues which have been raised by Professor Rajkumar? One, of course, the selection of the two eminent persons on the panel, and the idea of veto powers which are going to be given to the two members.
The question of veto power and the issue of veto power has been given to assure the judges that their words are not going to be ignored, because there will be three judges in this Supreme Court, Chief Justice and two senior most judges. So if the judges don't consider a person appropriate and see that this man is not fit to be Supreme Court judge, they have veto power with them. Similarly, if executive or the eminent person see that the judges are bringing those persons who are not fit to be Supreme Court judge, was that there should be broad consensus in the NJAC, and except one person, means only one person if it disagrees, then only the judge selection will be made. So out of say 7 persons, if only one person disagrees, 6 must agree, then only the person should be selected. So it is a safeguard. It is not something deterrent you see, against the whole thing. If this safeguard is provided, now selection of eminent person, you see, when the people, your Prime Minister is sitting, Leader of Opposition is sitting, Chief Justice is sitting, and these 3 persons have to select eminent person from the field. Obviously they will apply their mind, they will select out of their choose. They are doing. And as far as the argument that they may select wrong person, of course, if the level of Chief Justice of Supreme Court and 2 next justices working in the collegium can select wrong judges, then this system whole can also select wrong people. There is no doubt. Any system you bring, howsoever good a system you bring,
it will have some.
It can be failed by the people manning it. Why collegium system failed? It did not fail because system was bad when it was conceived. It failed because the person manning the system failed it.
Do we have checks and balances?
Why our constitution, you see, despite our constitution being so good on earth, perhaps the best constitution in the world.
There is always a scope of misuse
And there
and
still
a lot of other things.
we have, you see, the constitution being abused. But its peculiar thing about Supreme Court and about our judicial system is, in our Supreme Court, we don't have specialization. And as Professor Rajkumar is saying, this will be declared, you see, against basic structure of constitution. There is no definition of basic structure of constitution given anywhere. If I say, if 3 judges say that this is, you see, they want determined that this is contrary to basic structure, who can stop them?
You know, but part of the
So
thing, if I ask you, Manish, is the fact that had there been, you know, was more clarity on the definition or on the features of the eminent person, could have brought in, you know, could have settled this debate, or maybe the questions that have been raised on this particular aspect of the NJAC?
Is it necessary?
No, I mean, let me ask Manisha and then I'll come to you.
Obviously, you know, they should have clarified who or defined the eminent persons. But having said that, I think it's my, you know, just a thought, because I don't know what went on in the mind of our lawmakers or the executive before when they finalized the bill. You know, that was a deliberate mistake. They wanted there is a, you know, I talk to people in the government, they say, you know, hit and trial se karenge, we'll see how it works. So my very simple, you know, response to them is that if you wanted to do it through hit and trial, you could have easily made the collegium system more transparent. You could have included those hits and checks and balances into the collegium system, introduce them.
Is this the same argument which has been put forth by the people, the judges, the senior advocates who are opposed to the NJAC?
Yeah, you know, slowly and steadily they are wearing around to this very idea. Who's going to be an eminent person? In fact, that issue will come up before the Supreme Court.
Is it also, no, is there also a theory that because the judges don't want to part with their, you know, authority or their powers of appointing other judges, which would have meant, of course, as I said, it could have just made it a very internal matter, something which has been going on for very long, something which Justice Dhingra has put forth in very, you know,
let me assure you,
yeah,
that the answer to this question is a very, very categorical yes. Nobody, you know, in India, especially India, nobody wants to give up the power that he has been granted a few years ago, a few decades ago. The same holds true of every judge in this country, and I know my share. But having said that, you know, if the government really wanted to do it, the problem with this Supreme Court bench is that if they tomorrow strike down this NJAC, they will be open to the charge or the accusation that they did it because they wanted, because a member of this bench is going to become Chief Justice of India in 2 years, in 1.5 years actually. So, you know, tomorrow somebody will very well, somebody in the government sitting here, he will say, उन्होंने तो इसलिए किया क्योंकि वो कल को खुद लगाना चाहते थे. My point to all this is that you ensure that sitting in that collegium, the same judge who's now hearing your case, he cannot bring in the wrong people. You make it transparent. You allow, you know, everybody talks about the freedom of press. You give Manish Chibbar, who's working for the Indian Express, a chance to file an RTI. I filed 10 RTIs and in no case have I received. I filed an RTI asking why Justice Shah was refused appointment to the Supreme Court. No response. You make it clear. You bring it under RTI. Okay. That the government will never do, because it suits them.
Okay, let me ask Justice Agarwal. Justice Agarwal, how valid is this argument to bring it all under the purview of the RTI? and make it more transparent and open.
आरटीआई के अधीन इसको लाने से अधिक फर्क नहीं पड़ना है, क्यों बेसिक गलती वही है। सवाल यह है कि घुटना अपने पेट की तरफ मुड़ रहा है। जब घुटना अपने पेट की तरफ मुड़ने लगता है तो अब हमें देखना पड़ेगा कि इतने बड़े प्रजातंत्र में या लोकतंत्र में हमें देखना पड़ेगा कि ऐसा ना हो। ये हुआ और हो रहा है, दिस इज ए फैक्ट, वी नो सो मेनी केसेस। ऐसा नहीं है। अब प्रश्न यह है कि इसको ट्रांसपेरेंट कैसे बनेगा। इट इज नॉट दैट इजी टू मेक इट ट्रांसपेरेंट। इतना आसान नहीं है ट्रांसपेरेंट बनाना। और जबकि स्थिति यह है कि किसी एडवोकेट का नाम जब किसी हाईकोर्ट जज के अपॉइंटमेंट के लिए जाता है तो उसके बाद उसके खिलाफ शिकायतें शुरू होती हैं। आई नो वन जज और 1 और 2 जजेस जिनके खिलाफ 150, 200 शिकायतें गई हैं वहां पर, और फिर उनके डिसीजन होते हैं। ऐसा इतना इजी नहीं है जो सोच रहे हैं कि ये इतना आसान है। इतना आसान नहीं है आज भी। एंड दे वेट फॉर सच कमेंट्स, दे डिसाइड देम। एंड फिर भी होता क्या है, जिस तरीके से कुछ पब्लिक इंस्टीट्यूशंस का दुरुपयोग हो रहा है, होता रहा है, और जिसके लिए वजह से यानी भारत के लोकतंत्र ने भी पार्टी का भी राज्य बदल दिया। उस सबके वही सब कारण वहां भी हैं। जब वो सब कारण वहां हैं तो चेंज होना तो आवश्यक था। चेंज होना आवश्यक है। अब ये सोचना है कि उसी में कुछ कर देते, I think it is not that easy.
Is it okay for let's say some sections of of the center of the government to say that this is going to be, of course, treated as a very hit and trial in a hit and trial way, in a hit and trial method, to see if it works and how it works, and accordingly changes can be brought in.
ऐसा है। अगर आपको हाईकोर्ट जज बनना है तो आप किसी चीफ जस्टिस के या किसी उसके रिलेटिव होना करीब करीब आवश्यक है। अब जब ये स्थितियां आ गई हैं तब फिर कैसे होगा। जब ये स्थितियां आ गई हैं, वो किसी न किसी का जूनियर है, नहीं तो किसी का हुआ है।
So
तो अब ये इस तरीके जब ये
even now in the body you're going to have at least 2 judges, 2 senior judges and 1 CJ.
ये भय की बात है कि आगे वैसा होगा। 3 एमिनेंट पर्सन्स क्या हिंदुस्तान में 3 एमिनेंट पर्सन्स कहीं है ही नहीं। इट इज नॉट दैट। और क्या ये अपॉइंटमेंट नहीं कर सकते हैं, और क्या अपॉइंटमेंट क्या पूरे उसके विचार के साथ नहीं होगा, ये सोचना कि पूरे विचार के साथ नहीं होगा, बिल्कुल गलत है।
Former judges, both of you in fact have more faith on somebody outside the system regarding the appointment of judges. Have you seen that level of corruption within the system?
Practically I have seen that level of corruption. I have seen the names of Chief Justice not being sent to High Court until that Chief Justice has sent the name of person for the High Court recommended by the Chief Justice or other judge of Supreme Court. I have seen Chief Justices going regularly to the doors of Supreme Court judges to get their name recommended. I have seen them there privately that look, this is what is happening in this country, that unless I recommend the name, my name is not being considered. This is practically, and this is in state of Delhi I am saying. And I can give innumerable. And why we are afraid? I don't understand. You see, Supreme Court is not going to run away from this country. If this system, earlier also Supreme Court stepped in when the earlier system failed. Supreme Court said, okay, your appointments are wrong, and now we will step in. We will do this. If we are afraid of failure of a system when we have already failed a system. Why should we be afraid of a system getting? We are afraid of hit and trial. Tell me one law which is perfect law. In this country, there is not a single law which is perfect law or which is not being misused. There is no law. And no law can be, made in such a manner that it is not misused. It depends upon the person.
That's right. And
personalities. If personalities like Chief Justice, 2 senior most judges, Prime Minister, and sitting together cannot select one good judge, I think it is shameful for this country.
Sir, are you happy with the composition of the NJAC, or do you think that there could have been one more or a couple of more elements that could have been?
Then the same criticism would have been there.
Sure.
You make any, if you have to criticize, you bring in any system. You
And
will
they'll
have
be-
criticism.
Fine, fine.
So why should see not this, that alternative? You bring and I can, you see, there in Times of India there is a column, the view and counter view, daily. You give one view, there is always a counter view.
Okay.
For that fear that this system may not work, this is a hit and trial method.
Fine.
We cannot say that we will not change. Actually what we are saying now is we will not change. And this is our attitude, not only in respect of appointment of judges, but in respect of whole judicial system.
Fine.
We are not prepared
Fine.
to...
Fine. This system.
I would like to ask
With the
both
Prime
of
Minister,
them.
with the Prime
You know,
Minister.
Can
everybody-
you do that after this quick
Yeah.
break, Manish? Because I'm just asked to take this break. Welcome back. In Inside today, we are discussing the issue of judges' appointment. Yes, Manish, please carry on.
Yeah, you know, both the honorable judges sitting here, you know, they were talking about how judges, sitting judges or chief justices, if they don't go to the to meet, or they don't you know, socialize with the Supreme Court judges, senior Supreme Court judges, they never come to this, you know, make it to the Supreme Court. And I'm sure they are also talking about High Court lawyers who, if they don't meet the members of their High Court collegiums, they will never get to become. So, you know, my very simple premise is that did Justice Dhingra become a judge? He was from the services. And, you know, I have very high respect for him. He was a great judge. Because some of his judgments, great judgments, you know, they are still cited, and his services are still being utilized in various forms. So basically, my question to them is that I'm sure it is not your case, sir, that everyone who gets to become
See, I was just, let me tell you, I was tried to be ousted twice. See, one senior most judge of the High Court, who was my inspecting judge, he made an effort to give me C grade when soon after I had decided Parliament attack case. Like that I should have been put a judge. See, then you see, the full court did not agree to C but gave B to me, which is again a very lower grade. I was all along having A grade. Once I sent 2-3 politicians to jail in Royd cases and in Tada cases, my grade was reduced to B plus by the judges, not by politicians. Once I decided the Tada cases, this Pota and Parliament Act case, my effort was made to make it C. See, I had written to the High Court when it was made from A to B plus, that so long as I am a judge, I don't bother what grade you give me. I shall keep deciding cases according to my conscience. If it is sin to speak truth, I will keep continuing doing this sin. So this I have written to High Court by the letter, and they told, you see, in the private view, Mr. Dhingra is an incorrigible judge. See, before being elevated.
My question.
No, I am telling you why I was
is
made. It was my luck that Justice Katju was made Chief Justice, and he stood for me. Otherwise, see, I was out of judiciary.
So, sir.
So there was one judge.
But Justice
That
Dhingra-
is exactly my point, sir.
Yeah.
You will have people in this system, in this very system, who will support you. For after all,
RTI, you're
Justice
getting lot of
Katju, came in through this very system.
I think it's a very valid point. But here, Justice, how do you look at the fact that much has been said about bringing the judiciary under the purview of the RTI, ensuring that people can question this? Do you think that's one of the revolutionary steps which India should consider? At the same time, what happens to other important cases like judges' assets case or things like that? I mean, where do you think we should be rather drawing a line here to ensure to in fact touch upon the real spirit of accountability and transparency?
You see, as I told you, bring any law, it depends upon the personality of the person who is manning the law. We have very good judicial system in which everybody is heard. We have good high courts. But what is happening nowadays in high courts and Supreme Court? 75% of the time of high court and Supreme Court is consumed by rich people and influential people. Why the cases are pending? As he said, you bring 10,000 judges, a case is good. Because we are not concerned with the common man. We are concerned with publicity. We are concerned with deciding few high-profile cases and spending our time in the court. I have 3-year tenure. I will spend my 3-year tenure. And then we have a defective system. We are not admitting that it is a defective system. We have no specialization. Unless we bring specialization, that there is a constitution bench which will hear all constitutional matter, it will not change. You see, they will be expert of constitutions. There is a criminal bench which will hear throughout criminal cases, it will not be changed. It will be expert of criminal matters, no advocate will be able to befool it. We are not changing the system. And the moment you bring anything to change, tell them changes to the judges to change. No. We see you have not changed the number of holidays. Brian, you see the Chief Justice brought a resolution that we should work for some days during vacation. Whole bar and the bench was against. I, as a High Court judge, made a proposal that you reduce at least some holidays of the trial court judges. You are giving them 1 month, 1 month earned leave, 21 days special leave, 16 days, and medical leave. If you count the number of work days which they can work, practically is half of the year.
Okay.
So you are not bringing any change in the whole judiciary.
Justice Agarwal, what is your take on improving the performance of the judiciary as a whole in this country? Because after all, that perhaps is the thing which affects anybody who's watching this show and anybody who's really interested in this debate.
Actually, what Mr. Justice Dhingra said, actual situation is this, that if you are an advocate in Supreme Court, you are heard on the basis of the face.
Right.
Or actually a common man is not heard with that alarcity and care which is being given to the persons having big guns, for whom some big gun appears actually.
So how should one improve this system?
This should not be there. This is our daily experience.
So what should be done? What are the practical ideas you have here?
Actually, we should change ourselves.
No,
we should change ourselves.
I'm sorry, there are no business rules made in Supreme Court and High Court.
And
they should first make business rules for themselves. That in what manner the case will be heard. You see, any judge can tell you fix the case on Sunday at my house. See, there are cases where person has been granted bail at 12 midnight at the house of the judge.
And not just that.
Yeah.
One Chief Justice of India comes, he says no mentioning. The next Chief Justice of India comes, okay, mentioning is allowed. And mentioning allowed in which cases? In which, senior advocates, who have the profile, who charge in lakhs, they appear before that judge. Basically, the problem is, and it's a very valid point you have made, that the system remains the same. The judges will change, only the system of selection of judges is changing.
Right.
Unfortunately, now is the time for the Supreme Court of this country to also take heed to the plight of millions of Indians who are suffering from this judicial system, that how to make, Indian judiciary pro-poor. Right now, if you don't have a big lawyer, the judges are not even going to listen to you. If I don't hire a Harish Salve or a Kapil Sibal or a Mukul Rohtgi, they are not ready to hear me. unfortunately, the judges, they sitting there on that pedestal, they are refusing to see that India continues to be a poor country. This this should be an opportunity for them to finally rise to the occasion and change the system. But what will happen? These 5 judges, they will decide this matter on constitutionality and go home, and tomorrow will be the same story again.
Okay, one more aspect before addressing this, before in fact taking this this thought forward, Professor Rajkumar, the fact that many judges are now opposed to it, saying that this would rather have some sort of an adverse impact on judicial independence. Now, I'd like to learn from you, what are the models that one can see from other countries where, the judge's appointment itself and the other procedures include, in fact underlines that the judiciary is more independent in those countries as compared to that in India?
Yeah, but first of all, the problem that we have in our country are not unique in the sense that many countries in the world have been battling with this issue and they have attempted to reform their process. In fact, UK is a very good example that wide-ranging reforms relating to the judicial appointments procedure, including the setting up of the Judicial Appointments Commission, was initiated. But where I slightly would disagree with some of the distinguished members of the panel here is that we cannot move a legislation knowing consciously that this is kind of a trial and error method. When the legislation is being drafted and moved and passed, there should be honest belief in that this is the best possible legislation.
Right.
It might be that the experience will tell us that it isn't, but we can't start by saying this is a kind of a trial and error method and we'll figure it out.
You cannot really appoint so many judges and then say that,
and then after that we
wrong.
will figure it out.
Yeah.
Now the experience shows that first of all, a broad-based selection process creates checks and balances for an accountability. So for example, I have no problem in involving non-judicial members in the appointment process. There's in fact, that's one of the banes of our society. In fact, there is a provision in the Constitution which says that a distinguished jurist could be appointed as a judge of the Supreme Court. But we never use the provision in the Constitution. We ought to have, and we should. We should bring in academics into the Supreme Court, and we have not been able to. If you look at the US, for example, consistently, several professors of law from top law schools have become judges of the Supreme Court in the US. In this country, we have not had so far a person who is out from an academic field to come into the Supreme Court. We've got lawyers who have come into judges, but we've not had a single academic to serve as a judge of the Supreme Court here, although we have a provision in the Constitution. I believe that the broad-based framework will bring in people who are outside the system to be engaged in the selection process. And broad-based means involving with specific designation, not eminence. You look at the Judicial Appointments Commission in the UK, you will find that the bar and the members of the bar are specifically designated to serve. In this case, the entire bar is out. We have absolutely not involved the bar, the legal fraternity, who are the fulcrum of the entire legal profession. Where are the members of the bar? Eminent members could be bureaucrats. It could be members. It could be simply anybody. In fact, I will guess that it is going to be people who are actually not connected with the legal profession for all the reasons why some of the appointments have been made in the National Human Rights Commission, in the Central Vigilance Commission, and many other commissions. Second, if you look at the US process, for example, they have a publicly engaged, transparent Senate judiciary proceedings in which the process of appointment with checks and balances, you have politicians sitting there and questioning the judge in front of the media as well as the society to be able to defend his or her positions all through his or her life. It's a public process. We don't have that. As Manish said before...
Can we afford to have something like that? I mean, I'm just wondering, can we really have a system like that?
Well, RTI has done that only, Shalini. Precisely what RTI has done is what information which was private in nature has come into the public domain. We need to be much more open about the idea that these appointments involve public exercise of power, and it is important that the citizens and the civil society have a stake in it.
But even the US system, for just as an adding to what he said, that is also not perfect. There has been a judge in the Supreme Court of the US who used to fall asleep while hearing cases. So those kind of
those things are possible.
These things will always remain.
Yeah.
But what I am saying, that is because there is no age of freedom.
Yeah. So yes, I know. I am aware of that.
What are the practical solutions to improve the performance of the judiciary? I think that's something we'll have to look at. Much has been said about opening more courts. We have, in fact, Gram Nyayalayas and whatnot at different levels. Also the vacancies of judges and a number of things. But what is it basically?
You see, today, the main reason of our judiciary not getting improved are its two higher courts, High Court and Supreme Court. You see, you have a tribunal in which Supreme Court judge is the chairman of the tribunal. Now, it is presumed that Supreme Court judge has sufficient experience and knowledge. Against that tribunal, you can go to High Court and file a writ and get a stay of any order. See, that is what is, tragedy of this country. That, we exercise powers without knowing the result of the power. What is going to happen? You see, there are a number of, and every High Court judge, can pass interim orders without referring to any judgment, without giving any reason. Stay granted.
I have news for you, sir. In many cases, even Supreme Court judges, they pass final judgments without even, they will write 200 pages and nobody is wiser why they have come to the conclusion that they come to.
Okay, Justice Agarwal,
Just I wanted to say one thing, that it should not be rejection of bar. It should be selection from the bar. The big officers think that this person will not be able to do much good as an advocate, so they get him actually somewhere. Get him and actually some entry in the judiciary.
What I'm trying to understand here is that since what the pendency of cases in
of cases is not going to be reduced.
That is the way it should.
Why they are coming to the court? Because they think that we may get success.
They are afraid of going to the courts presently. I mean, that's
how they go to the court.
Yeah.
Actually, if you go to common citizen, you will find he resists courts. He says, you tell me for recovery of, if I have 10 lakhs, should
you not like to go back to the court?
Even a common citizen will not go. Because, I tell you, I have a case, I brought it to the notice of High Court.
Yeah.
A judge in Delhi, this trial court, gave 80 adjournments only for announcement of judge. 80 adjournments. So what is required is, as I told you, that if you want to make this judiciary efficient, pro-people and quick, result-oriented, make specialized courts.
Okay.
Make specialized courts, have 3 or 4 branches, criminal court of branch, where the judges should go right from magistrate to Supreme Court. Make civil, law, make taxation, make labor law, these separate streams, as we have in medical science.
Right.
We have in other. And appoint judges there, they will get sufficiently trained, they will be elevated from one place to other. And if they go to right up to Supreme Court, one, there will be no fear. Second, they won't be acting on face value, take it granted.
Okay. Concluding remarks for you. I really have no line.
Well, just I want to say that we have painted a very sort of bleak picture, but we have to recognize that the judiciary continues to enjoy the most respect and legitimacy and credibility among all other institutions of government in the country today. And the people of India have deposed enormous faith in the possibility of judiciary to deliver justice. So it's also important for us to keep that in mind while we seek reforms of the judiciary.
Right. While the faith is intact, it's very important for the judiciary to also deliver at every level, and we have to really see that happen in the country. Fine, sir. We'll have to wrap up this discussion here. Thank you.